You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers, about hikers, for everybody.
Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. Join Steve and his guests every week as he staggers from Georgia to Maine.
Hey guys, it's so good to be back with you again on the Mighty Blue Show. This is episode number 462, and we're lucky enough to have quite a couple on with us today. Jessica and Largo Sueiro are mother and son. They've always lived an adventurous life as a family, along with Jessica's partner Will and their daughter Avalon, prepared to take on various quite nomadic lifestyles that fit their family dynamic. As you'll hear, they've spent several years living in a kind of untraditional way, so hitting the Appalachian Trail this year was well within that type of lifestyle. Jessica is a firecracker, and I say that with admiration, while Largo is a measured, remarkably mature 17-year-old who must have been a great hiking partner for his mum. We'll hear from the two of them in a moment. By the way, our wide-ranging chat lasts longer than my normal interviews because there was so much to say. As I mentioned a few weeks back, I'm trying to cut down the length of my shows by various methods, so I intend to have longer main interviews should the circumstances allow. After Jessica and Largo, we're going to hear another chapter from Emily Leonard's Happy Hiking, with Emily learning the hard way. Sending your cold weather gear home too early can be a mistake you might wish to avoid. Thanks to those of you who sent best wishes and prayers for my ex-wife Diane. I appreciate it, as I'm sure she does. She still needs them, so keep them coming. Now let's get on and meet Jessica and Largo, or Sunshine and Captain. Today we've got a mother and son duo on the podcast. This is Jessica and Largo Sueiro, otherwise known as Sunshine and Captain. Hey guys, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Oh, we're super happy to be here.
Good.
Absolutely.
Now, you did the AT this year, but it's really just yet another adventure in what has been a somewhat nomadic life for quite a while. You were RVers. Tell us a little bit about that.
So we actually started out as slow travelers. So we traveled for 3 years, a year in Costa Rica, a year in Ecuador, a year in France, just living in an Airbnb. And then the kids had always wanted...
Is that a term, slow travelers? What is it? What's it mean?
It is actually a term. I invented it. No, I didn't. Slow traveling is a term that's used for people who aren't kind of go like on a long-term vacation going from hotel to hotel, but are hunkering down in a country or city, whatever, for an extended period of time. So not permanently, but not like a vacation. So slow traveling. So we were, I think 9 to 12 months in each one of those 3 countries. Wow. And then after that, we were looking for another adventure, and the kids had always said they wanted to go RV. And of course, Will and I, my partner, were like, no way. That is every kid's dream and every parent's nightmare, like living in a tin box all in one space.
I'm sure.
But we finally, we kind of parent from the style of giving the kids a voice in what we're doing. And once we realized we could afford that and we could function in a space like that, and we had a bit of travel experience underneath us, we said, what the heck, let's do it. So we bought an RV, and we had never been RVers before. You know, it's not too complicated, but we had to learn the lingo and, you know, all the logistics of it, and parenting and schooling and running a business from an RV. And we took off and we RV'd Europe for 3 years. We hit every country in Europe. Now, not every country was hit with the RV. Some we had to fly to, but our goal was to hit every country, and we did it.
So what was the contrasting emotions? Did the kids love it and you hate it, or did it actually flip around at all?
I actually think it turned out pretty similar for emotion-wise. I mean, obviously, myself as a kid, I liked it a bit more. I saw less of the serious aspect of it, and I saw more of just like the fun traveling to different countries. But in the end, I think we both ended up with some good, some bad things about it.
And when he says both, he means him and his sister. And then Will and I enjoyed it, but I'm not going to pretend that there wasn't a transition period. So every time we change our style of travel, so when we left the United States for the first time, we had like an 8 to 10 month transition into kind of this nomadic lifestyle. Yeah. When we moved into the RV, it took about 5 months. We went from the RV to living in a sailboat. It took, I don't know how many months that took, 5 or 6 months. You know, when we started the AT hiking that, I mean, there was an adjustment. Obviously, it wasn't a 6-month adjustment, but it took, you know, we were done by 6 months. So, you know, each thing has its challenges. And when we were in the midst of the RV, we definitely, I think Will and I would agree that those first couple of months, we felt like we were fighting more and kind of just adjusting to this. We started our business right before we went in the RV. We started homeschooling 2 kids instead of 1. And it was just a tough transition. But if you ask me now, and towards the, obviously, once we adjusted, what was my favorite style of travel that we've done so far? I really think I would have to say the RV with the kids, because they were just at the perfect age and everything was just magical. You know, they didn't really need their own space at that point. Once we got to the boat, they were teenagers. They wanted a little more space, a little more privacy. It was just a magical time, you know?
So you've kind of imbued your children with your love of travel and so on. But were you dragged kicking and screaming Largo, you and your sister, or did you embrace it straight away?
Oh, absolutely not. This was 95% our dream but kind of alongside our parents. If anything, we were kind of pushing to go further, go more crazy. The RV was definitely a jump. And then after that, eventually we did go on a boat as well, which was a very large jump. But it was always us kind of accompanying our parents in these concepts of going into these massive adventures. If it was us being dragged and kicking and screaming and some such, it would have been a very different experience. Sure. And I think that my parents really did make an effort to try and avoid that, and that really improved the whole travel for us, because of course our opinions would have been tainted. But I mean, it was absolutely.
How old are you now then, Largo? How old are you
I
now?
am 17, recently turned 17.
I got to tell you, not sticking up for your parents, but accepting the fact you needed some sort of parental intervention at some stage of your life is quite an impressive thing. So good on you for that.
You know, I think, Steve, that we didn't give them much of a choice in the sense that they thought this was totally normal. Because it took us 7 years, it was a 7-year dream in the making to go to this full-time travel life. So all we kept talking about with them was, well, this is what people do. They do this. They just go travel. And, you know, it's taking us longer, but we're going to go travel. And I think they were young. They thought it was totally normal. And then once it became our normal, they were like, well, this is what we do, you know?
And an interesting thing was that we actually initially started with a year in Costa Rica. But we were, as kids, we were told, oh yeah, we're going back in a year. We're going back to our regular stationary life. And I think coming in with that mindset of, oh, it's not permanent, so enjoy while we've got it, really helped us.
Good skills.
Yeah, exactly. And then as we've kept traveling, I've now lived over half my life traveling like this.
Wow.
And so it really has just become the new normal.
So step back a bit then, Jessica. So when did the idea, you and Will had this dream when your kids were very young, I presume, in that case, or young kids, very young kids. What was it that precipitated that attraction to that nomadic lifestyle?
So our kids were not only young, Largo wasn't even born. Captain was not born. He was actually in my stomach when we made the decision. Right. And the decision was to go and live. So Will worked for one of the big accounting firms, or big 2, I don't even know how many there are now.
Big 4.
Big 4. And they had locations all over the world. And he said, what would you think about going to live in another country for a couple of years? And I was pregnant with Captain at the time. And I said, sure, why not? Yeah. And so we entertained that for, I don't remember exactly how long at this point, but for several years, and it kept falling through. We were actually supposed to move to Madrid. Something happened. It fell through. We moved to Boston. We kind of put it to bed. Then another company he was working for had the option for us to live abroad again. And we're like, okay, let's do it. We were going to do it. It was going to be safe, right? We were going to have, school was paid for, trips back to the U.S. were paid for, our apartment was paid for. It was a nice life. We were going to bank some cash, come back to the U.S.,
cool,
you know, and live a respectable life. Like we're supposed to do what's the best for our kids. Well, what's the best for one person's kids might not be the best for everyone, right?
Absolutely.
And finally, I just said to Will, I said, you know what? I guess this dream's never going to happen. I was working from home. I said, what do you think about me taking the kids? They were in a French school at the time, to Paris for the summer. And I'll work from there. I'll cut out any type of childcare. We won't have golf camp. We won't have gymnastics camps. There are no piano lessons. And we will go and live there. And you can come on your vacation, summer vacation with us. I guess this is a compromise we have to make. We'll never live outside the U.S., so let's just do summers.
Sure.
And he was like, hell no, I'm going with you. I'm like, how are you going to come with us? You know, I've already rented out the apartment on Airbnb. You're going to have to stay with friends. And so he went to his company and he proposed that he come with us. And, you know, he went to the company and said he wanted to take 5 of his weeks through his vacation through the summer. And they said, well, why don't you go work from the Paris office? And so basically what happened is we spent that summer in Paris in a really bad apartment. Will and I slept on the futon couch, the kids in the bedroom. Our daughter was hospitalized. She had mono really bad. I got food poisoning twice. Life was just not perfect, but we had an amazing summer. And we lived in Paris for a summer and found all the free things to do. And we functioned really well as a family. And we were so happy. And we're like, how do we make this happen? So we went back to the US at the end of the summer. And we said, we're going to give ourselves 12 months. We're going to sell everything. And we're going to go start traveling through I had a graphic design business. So I was already working remote. So that's basically, it took us 13 months instead of 12. And that's kind of how the dream manifested. And the why behind the dream is, Will and I love to travel, but it really wasn't just because we wanted to travel. We had three main reasons. We wanted a tighter family bond, and we knew that we could do that through travel. We wanted to educate the kids out in the world with the people in the world, and we wanted to create memories over buying stuff. And it was quite that simple, and to this day, that's still our why.
And it's quite interesting that the chaotic first travel of going to Paris for the summer is really what inspired us to do so, because looking back on it, everything that could have gone wrong went wrong.
But chaos is great. Chaos is great.
It is.
And you work your way to your problems, you become a problem solver, which is always helpful on the trail as well, wouldn't it?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. I was telling someone, mentally, it's a mental or a physical game, right?
Sure.
And one or the two, if you have to stop, is one of those is going to get you, right? And I always said the mental's not going to get us. We've been practicing for this mental for a decade. Living with limited resources on a boat and unable to get, showers when we need them and having to hitchhike and all this kind of stuff is stuff we've had to do over the last decade.
That's awesome. I think that giving that sort of education shot, I know that just a bit of a personal history. 35 years ago, I just worked out in my head, 35 years ago, I joined I worked in Lloyd's of London Insurance.
Okay.
And I was I was the first Lloyd's syndicate to have personal computers on our desks, literally 35 years ago, which is quite a long time ago. Before the internet.
So cool,
and I said to my buddy once, I said, you know what? I'm going to be able to do this job in 30 years' time from my castle in Scotland or something like that, because you can do it wherever you like, because that's what's going to happen in the end. And now look at you guys. I mean, everybody seems to be able to work remote, and I love that. But moving on, that was a slight digression.
No, I love that though, right? I absolutely love that.
Now, with your worldly experience now, Largo, and I'm not taking a piss, I mean it, you've had a lot of experience in the world, which is great.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the irony of ironies, you run an old school D&D business, don't you? So
that's right.
I thought there was a certain irony there. So give us a pitch for those old hippies who remember D&D in the 70s.
That's right. So yeah, at a certain age, of course, mom was kind of just saying, it's time to start making money. And of course, just as a baseline, because as a teen, being self-sufficient, you have to have some sort of income of some sort. And so I kind of looked out and I was like, well, I can't just work at the local convenience store or something like that, because we were traveling constantly. And I thought, why not just bring one of my hobbies into the mix? And perfect. I now run a Dungeons and Dragons groups online. There are so many resources now that allow you to play online with like video conferencing and different stuff like that, where I have managed to organize a Dungeons and Dragons groups online. Now people pay to play them. It's generally kids who are kind of in the same genre of travel, where they kind of can't really get a ongoing group in person. So
that's so cool.
Yeah, exactly. And I really noticed that there was a lack for it.
That opens up their own community as well, which is fantastic thing. So well done you. Now, so Jessica, you've always said you always travel, but taking time out to do a 6-month hike, which is what you did this year, is something different. How did that idea evolve? Or was this just natural progression from RVing on a boat, Airbnb? Is this another mode of travel you wanted to take on?
Well, not really. It was never my dream. I love to hike. We've done a lot of hiking. We hiked, the Camino Frances for 44 days. We've hiked to Machu Picchu several times, to the Andes Mountains. We've done day hikes, but obviously nothing to this extent. And it was always my partner's dream. And we kind of know like our schedule of what we're going to be doing for the next 3 or 4 years. Like, okay, in 2 years we'll buy the boat, or in 1 year we'll get an RV. Wow. But this AT thing came out of left field. It was the beginning of December, and we were in Paris for 4 months, hunkering down on work and school. And, you know, we work hard, we play hard, but we have to work hard to maintain this lifestyle because we're not independently wealthy. And so we were in a really, really work hard phase, 7 days a week for several months on end. And Captain is a junior in high school, but he was a sophomore at the time. And I knew from his sister, who's in university now, that the junior year is the hardest year. And so he was in the middle of his sophomore year, locked to his computer. I was locked to my computer all the time. And I said, you know what? There's when in life, and you really learn this on the trail because you start talking to other people, this is people's dream for decades, and they finally get to manifest it. And I said, when in life is he ever going to get another opportunity to just go take a break? I'll have them, you know, he'll go off to university, Will and I'll have pockets of time, you know, I'll retire eventually, but he won't, because he's very motivated and has very intense goals. And so I thought, you know what, we need a little break. And so I went to my partner, Will, and I said, Will, I have this crazy idea. What would you think if I took Largo to go hike the Appalachian Trail? And he said, all right, okay. And then I was like, oh, okay. You know, and then I brought it up to Captain, and Captain said exactly the right words for me to say, okay, we have to go. He said, but what about school? And what about Dungeons and Dragons? And I said, you can finish up he had already done a lot, because he does a dual enrollment program where he takes university classes that count as high school credit and college credit. Yeah. And so he had already done quite a bit he was finishing up. He didn't have much work left in his sophomore year to begin with, although he did have to still do some on the trail. So I said, you just got to hit it hard with school, and school will be done, because he didn't want to give up his academics. And he said, well, what about Dungeons and Dragons? I've built this business. And I said, okay, we'll get off trail every time that you have your sessions, which are Friday nights and Saturday mornings, and we'll make it work. And he said, okay.
There you go.
I said, okay.
There you go.
And that's kind of, you know, I wish it was this big, you know, dream of mine for decades or whatever, and a dream of his, but it manifested kind of very organically. That's how the Camino happened for us. I had a friend that hiked it, and I said to Will, why don't we do this? He goes, well, what do you know about it? And I said, nothing. And so I researched for 15 minutes, and we're like, okay, let's go do it.
Now I know. Yeah.
You know, and I'm really glad. There's no right way to do this, right? You can have the dream for 10 years, you can research for 5 years and still have an amazing experience. But I'm glad that we just
you know
took
what
the
it is?
plunge.
It's often happens to a lot of my guests, you know, a window opens and you choose to go through a window, or you choose not to go through a window. And that's in much of decisions in life, you know, and if you choose to go through, you experience something you probably hadn't expected to experience. You were experiencing your husband's dream, which has been one of the things, the main takeaway in our first conversation when we talked about this. You know, he couldn't come with you, but he was happy for you to go. So was he kind of vicariously hiking through you?
Yes.
Pretty much, yeah.
Well, we daily vlogged, and so he edited all the vlogs. So he was there with us. And I asked him again the other day, because we've been off the trail now almost 2 months, you know, because we've talked about this at great length. How hard was that? And he said, you know, it was really hard at times because I had FOMO, but then other times I felt like I was right there with you. Because often when we were vlogging, I would just turn the camera on and say, hey, Will, this is just for you. And talk about even like a different aspect of it that wasn't really relevant for the vlog, but was really made him feel like he was right there with us. Would you agree with that? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. And plus, with all of the times that he may have helped us along the way, setting up stuff, picking us up, I really feel like he was part of it, just not hiking it.
Well, you know, I mean, that's a great thing for him to do, because he's supporting you in what you've chosen to, the two of you chosen to do. But has you hiking it satisfied his dream, or do you think he's
No.
Oh, right. So he still might want to do it.
If anything, I'm fully supportive of him wanting to do it and me assisting him. At some point, it wouldn't happen until after Captain launched to university. But now I feel like he's even more determined of wanting to do PCT and wanting me to do it with him.
Right.
And so
nice.
That's a whole, you know, I would do it the second Captain went to university. But from a financial standpoint, that was the reason he didn't come with us, is that financially he had to stay behind and run our business and do some accounting work. There's no way we could have afforded for all of us to go. And so for that as well, it's really important to note that this journey was the three of us in different capacity. And I I don't doubt that Captain and I had the ability to do it, but with the circumstances, like I was working a bit on trail, he was doing his Dungeons and Dragons, he had to do some school. We wouldn't have been able to accomplish this without him being there really helping us.
So when you got off trail then for your Friday nights and Saturday morning sessions, Largo, what were they like? Did you turn up all scruffy to the online? And was a beard growing at that stage or what?
Generally I tried to keep myself very professional, freshened up before those things, but
from
sometimes
the shoulders up, you mean?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like sometimes I remember when we stayed at some hike in, I think.
I believe so.
Was it Fontana? He had on scrubs because that's the
loaner clothes.
Loaner clothing. Yeah.
I
I mean, and sometimes we would come in and something would happen, like the shuttle wouldn't show up or something, and we would come in like 5 minutes before class. He'd take a really quick shower. Sometimes he'd just have to set up his computer and just get on. I mean, you did a great job considering on those Fridays we got up extra early so we could still hit the miles.
That's
and
so
by
cool.
the time he went to that, he was exhausted. And on Fridays in the beginning, he was running back to back. So what, 4 to 6 and then 6 to 8?
It would be 4 to 6, 6 to 8, and then the next day from 8 to 10.
And then we get back on the trail.
Wow, fantastic. Funny enough, in loaner clothes, I wore a skirt literally all day.
Yeah.
And I'm shocked to record that I liked it way more than I should have done, I got to tell you.
Well, it's funny
I'm
because
not sure what that was about.
we saw so when we started seeing southbounders, the first 6 guys we saw, 4 of them had skirts on. You know,
skirts or kilts?
Well,
it may have been kilts.
It may have been kilts, to be
Mine
honest.
mine was a mini skirt. Mine was a mini skirt.
Oh, wow.
No, theirs were not mini skirts. They were not. And I think they were kilts, actually, to be honest.
All right. So you mentioned you've done the Camino, you've done the Machu Picchu. Were they in any way adequate preparation for the AT? Because I know it's hiking, but it's very different, isn't it? And I think Georgia is a surprisingly tough state, you know, more than perhaps people experience. How was it? How were you physically when you first started the trials, the two of you?
I don't think there really is any real adequate way to prepare, unless you're doing the PCT or the CDT to prepare for the AT, which would be absolutely insane. There is no real way, because you can be physically prepared, but there's no way to be prepared for taking the brunt of the force for hiking 6 months or depending on it, 4 to 6 months, just straight.
Yeah, I think the people, I mean, we were active and fit, but I would not say we were well trained for it. And we took our miles smaller in the beginning, but I did meet several people on the trail that were easily hiking 20s, said they were hiking 20s twice a week for months beforehand. And one of them didn't make it. And I know for certain because I'm friendly with her. And I don't know what happened to the others. Like, obviously you don't go from couch to AT. Like, you don't go from sitting on the couch.
I do. But all my hikes I do that.
But you must have been somewhat active. I don't see you being like sitting around watching TV.
My very first hike was the Appalachian Trail. And the first time I set up my tent was at the top of Springer Mountain on the first day. That was I'd only done 8 miles of hiking that day, and that was the approach trail that day.
So that's interesting that you say that, because I don't want to make it sound like we were all like, we were very similar. We did not know how to filter water. I didn't know you're supposed to squeeze the Sawyer squeeze. Another hiker schooled me on that really nicely. We hadn't used our stove. We had only set up our tent.
But I do have to
times.
say, we were prepared for the things that we needed to be prepared for. We had prepared to understand our sleeping situation. We had prepared with all the electronic gear, clothing, safety, all that stuff. It's just the general kind of day-to-day stuff that we thought, we'll learn that on the go.
So logistically, though, I mean, there's a lot of logistical things on the trail. How did you work that out? Because you had such a short lead-in time. You talked about it, made the decision in December, and then you left on, I think it was the 22nd of March. So how did you make those various logistical things that made it work for you?
So we took the time to learn the things like Captain just said, our equipment, safety, electronics, and weather. And we did not take any time to learn the trail. And when I say that, I mean, we learned nothing about this hostel, this shuttle driver. We didn't know who Fresh Ground was until we got on the trail. We didn't know anything about the Southern Cookie Lady until we were a mile away from her. We
Right.
we spent our time on the things that we thought if we didn't know them, we could die. And we weren't going to die if we didn't know about the cookie lady. And so
that is a very, let me tell you, that is a very
Yeah.
sensible approach, which I hadn't thought of before. That, you let the trail unfold in front of you, because the trail's there.
Yeah.
It's going to be what it is. The cookie lady's going to be where she is. When you come across her, you'll discover who she is. The things that you concentrate on are the things that were important to you to make sure you can get it done, which is most of us read 7 or 8 books before we go out there. So we kind of feel we know Maccabee Knob. We feel we know various other places on the trail, but we don't, of course, until we actually get there. So preparing the things you needed was a sensible thing, especially as you only had 3 months to prepare it. So, because you mentioned earlier on, when you actually read something for about 15 minutes on the Camino and decided to go. Yeah. So you do look into things enough to make you realize that's what you want to do you?
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I would have loved to watch all kinds of vlogs and know a little bit more, but our circumstances did not allow us the ability to do that. And if we wait, because we're changing adventures so frequently and doing so many different things, if we had everything fully researched, because we're working and schooling full time, we'd never be able to go. And so doing it that way, I don't think it's necessarily the right way. It was the right way for us, if that makes sense. And if you have the ability to read all this stuff and do it, that's really awesome. I like how we did it, because for us, it was exciting when we were just walking along and a guy says, "You're almost to the cookie lady." And we were having a rough day and we're like, "The cookie lady? What's that?" And also other hikers tell you when things are kind of coming down the line and what's going on, you get excited about it. And it was just circumstances of our life, the way that we had to do it and kind of pick and choose, what needed to be done and what didn't need to be done. And it worked out for us. But I think safety, is the most important, safety and our gear. And we were, like I said, we were very fortunate. We didn't see Will for the first month, but any gear stuff issues we had after that, we could usually get it pretty easily resolved within a couple of weeks with a little pain.
Right. That's always helpful. And you I know you skipped the approach trail sensibly, by the way, because it's an approach trail, So you went to the parking lot, went back to the top. And I watched your first day video when you danced took the first blaze. You said you were going to do that as a 100-mile ritual. Did you do that 21 times?
Well, it depends on what you qualify as a dance.
Yeah. What we did, we called a dance.
All right.
But sometimes we were so tired that we would say, "Okay, we're at 400 miles. We're going to dance for you. Now watch really closely." And we would just move our eyes from side to side and say, "Our eyes are dancing." Or sometimes we would take our poles. We'd be sitting down on the ground taking a break and we're like, "Oh, it's 100. It's another 100. We got to dance." And we just couldn't get up. So we would take our poles and shake our poles and say, "Our poles are dancing." So sometimes it was a little more thought out. But that was the best we could do almost. And we tried to have kind of these little, I guess we call them rituals, to kind of make it really kind of fun and silly. Because a lot of the time we'd get to things, every time we crossed another state, we would sing. Well, I can't sing. Awful. I'm terrible. And we couldn't remember the words to anything. And by the end, we were just looking at the phone and just like reading with a little bit of a pitch from the phone. And, we'd walk across roads and do the chicken dance, because it's a hard trail. And if you take it super serious, you got to be serious within reason to keep yourself safe. But if you take it too serious, you kind of lose the fun of it, and you kind of get in your head, right?
Yeah, definitely. Most certainly. We all need a break from ourselves, if you know what I mean, from time to time. We need to get on with those things. And I know that you vlogged your trail because you said your partner was editing it and so on. I remember podcasting my hike in 2019, and I found it exhausting just to do that. So you were videoing, which just takes a more degree of work. What was it like for you to do it every night? Did you sometimes think, "Oh my God, I just can't do this"?
So Captain and I shot it all, but Will edited it all.
Oh, so, all of it. He did all of it.
Yes.
Oh, right. Okay.
And my hat's off to people who are shooting it and editing it.
Yes.
I don't know how they do that. I mean, he was doing school a good part of the trail a little bit, and I was working a little bit, and shooting was so much fun for us. There were only about 5 days of 100, and I think we have 165 vlogs, where I just didn't feel like shooting. And I would usually say, I'm still going to shoot today, but I'm not feeling like it. Or there were a couple days where he's like, I'm just not feeling it. And he would just say, I'm just not feeling it. We're still going to shoot, but we're not. And it never felt like it was a task or anything that was really fun. But I think a part of it has that, well, we made it silly and fun, and we poked fun at ourselves. If we fell down, and it was on film, we just kept it there.
Of course.
You know, if I peed on myself, which I did, I'd tell people
Nice,
about it.
nice.
All the nitty gritty. It was fun for us, but I don't know if I would have continued to love it if when we got in the tent each night we had to edit.
Yeah.
I was so tired. How about you, Captain?
And not only that, yeah, I definitely think that they wouldn't be on par with what we actually produced if we were the ones editing it. Not only because we're not trained in editing, we're not the ones who normally edit for the YouTube channel, but also the energy that you have after that really depends on the day. So one day
Totally.
you could create an amazing edit, you could set it out, you could be just on the top of your game, and then the next one it would just be 5 clips stuck together with one music throughout the whole thing.
Right.
It really depended on the day. And seeing people who did do that, absolutely props to them. I mean,
Yeah.
I could not have survived the entire hike if we were doing both of that. But I just think that, yeah, it was
The good thing, though,
impossible for
what you
us.
have got now is a great record of what you did. And once you're out there, I mean, obviously, you're still mother and son, but
Right.
did the relationship modify as the hike went on? Because you're obviously close, because you said one of your reasons for doing the traveling and traveling together was to stay close as a bond, as a unit. But you became a bond of 2. Did that relationship change as time went on?
Yes, he became mother and I became son.
Yeah.
Is that what you're going to say?
You became the bothersome teenager, did you?
I became the problem.
Pretty similar, because I would definitely say our experience levels varied quite a lot. Not to say that you weren't experienced, however, I was better in certain fields
Yeah.
and you were better in certain things.
I think if we're going to tell the truth, you can tell the truth. He's a much stronger, faster hiker than I am. I have some intuition that he doesn't necessarily have, and it's just a difference of, things that I'm more aware of because he is a wild and free teenager, which I love and is amazing. But the
Course.
combination of the two of us together, we didn't walk off a cliff, luckily.
Good
you
team.
know?
It's a good team.
Exactly.
It's a team. You hike as a team because
But I was thinking about this the other day, and I meant to tell you this, Largo. I don't remember anything you were afraid of on the trail. Like, I was afraid of the snakes and the bears and the this and the that. Like, the only time you were ever afraid on the trail was that time we came through the notch, remember, at night, and we were scared because
That's
we were
right.
in a situation it took us too long to go the mile through
Wow.
there. And it took us a long time, and we didn't. That's one of those situations where not knowing everything about the trail hurt us because we thought we could get through it in 2 hours. It's only a mile, and we couldn't. And so we were walking in the dark across those boulders, and it was really scary. But outside of that, he was really, it's not a child's job to be the parent and make the parent feel safe. And I
Course.
fully believe that.
Of course.
But we all have our natural fears, and I was nervous of the snakes, and he was just so calm. And that combination of the things that one of us wasn't so good at or wasn't comfortable in, the other one seemed to be really good at, and it really made for a great hiking partnership.
I'm sure. I'm sure actually you would have been not difficult. It would have been difficult for people to integrate you into a tramley as well because your time schedule was a bit off as well. So you were moving back and forth. But you have a tight bond anyway, automatically being mother and son. But the fact that you are together as a group, it's tougher then to integrate into a tramley. Did you find yourself being with people a lot?
Yeah, I would say because of our situation, because every Friday, Saturday we would get off, people would keep going, of course. And so we really found ourselves cycling through different tramleys every couple of weeks.
We were
because
tramley sluts.
That's right. So we were...
Classic. It's the teenager coming out again.
Yeah, basically. Because we were really changing constantly, and it made for really good connections, but it also made for us having known a lot of the people up and down the trail.
Sure.
Because after we stopped taking those zeros, and once we kind of really tried to hightail it up there and bump up our miles, we started seeing those people again.
We started catching
it was
people.
quite nice.
Nice,
So,
yeah. It's really.
Yeah, I mean,
it's
there are a
always
lot
good
of
to see
people.
people again on the trail you've met before, isn't it? It's a
It
wonderful thing.
is. It really is. And because of our situation, and we had to take almost 4 weeks off in May for him to take some exams. Like he said, we were catching up with people. So by the time we got to Shaw's, right before the last big push, through the 100-mile wilderness, we were seeing people that we saw back in Georgia. And we were
Yeah.
like, whoa, hey. And it was
It's
really
amazing.
cool.
Yeah, it's a really cool part of it as well. And you've already said earlier on that this wasn't your dream. When did you fully embrace it and take it on as your own? Because, I can't imagine doing this for 6 or 7 months to fulfill somebody else's dream. So you must have been loving it almost straight away, wouldn't you?
Well, I don't know if it was love or I would say it was more just dedication, if anything, because the moment I stepped out on trail, maybe a day into it, I decided that I wasn't here to mess around, so I was going to complete the entire thing. It wasn't
Cool.
that I automatically fell in love with it. It was more that I wanted to get this to get this dream done and to have
Why am I
that.
not surprised by you saying that, Largo? Really?
Captain-
That's a good question.
Captain's competitive and goal oriented, and he literally was like 5 minutes on the trail, and he goes, well, we've gone this far. I'm not going to waste those 5 minutes of my life. Now we have to go the whole way. And
Nice
I,
line.
of course,
Nice line.
when I sold this idea to him, I said, listen, people go the whole way, and we can go the whole way. We'll meet a lot of people going the whole way, but we will stop whenever you don't want to do this anymore.
Right.
We're going there to have this journey, have this experience. For me, it wasn't a goal. I didn't feel like I needed to check this box. There's nothing wrong with that, but that wasn't my intention. I just wanted to have a really cool experience with him and give us both a break from all the technology and be in nature.
But wasn't there ever a time, though, when had he dropped out or decided, after 4 months or 5 months, he said, I've had enough of this, and you didn't, I know that, but had you done that, you were 4 or 5 months into it, Jessica, would you have wanted to carry on then?
That's a good question.
No.
Wow.
Several people have asked me this, and listen, this experience was mind-blowing. I still can't believe I did it, and I'm so, so grateful for it. However, my journey was to go with him. Now, if we were a week away and he dropped out, I'd probably continue. But if we were, say, halfway done, I wouldn't have continued without him, because he's going to go to university in a year and a half, and I don't even want to miss 3 months. Now, I'm not with him 24/7. He has his
Sure.
own life, his own friends, his own things going on. But I didn't want to spend 3 months away from him. I can do that in a year and a half. I can spend the rest of my life away from him, except when he comes to visit, And so I would not have gone on unless it was just a couple of weeks left.
Hey, Largo, I would have loved for you to have tested your mum on that.
That's a good point.
With about a month and a half to go, said, no, Mum, I think I've had enough. I don't really want to carry on.
On
What would
April
you have said?
Fools, I did that to him.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. If listening to this, you want to have a good laugh. If you're having a bad day, go watch our April Fool's video, because I got so many people, and my dad was so upset. My mom said he started crying after, because he knew how bad we wanted this. Now, you asked the question if I would have continued, but here's a more interesting aspect, is that I had tendinitis about 80% of the trail, and I just hiked with it. I taped myself up. I cried. I iced. I took ibuprofen. I had varying degrees of level 1 pain up to level 9.
Wow.
At one point, I had to get off the trail for 3 days because of this, and it hurt so bad. And I had a very that's when Will got on the trail and hiked with Captain for 3 days. I went to his rental he had in Virginia, and I said, okay, what am I going to do? I'm going to ice this, but now I have to have a really tough conversation with myself and also with Will about, if I cannot continue, will we let Captain continue on his own? And I immediately said, I know he's capable. I've been out there hiking with him. I know he can do this. I know he would want to go on, because him and I have had the conversation already, because my tendinitis was so bad. And then I brought it up to Will, because I said, I don't want to make this decision when I can't walk. I want to make this decision now that we know what the answer is, if it does come to it. And Will said, do you think he can do it? And I said, yes. And so our plan was that if I could not go on, we were going to allow him to go ahead on his own. And he said he would want to. So he said,
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. Based on everything I've said already, you can probably assume that I would have wanted to keep going. But I mean, it wasn't a question.
Yeah,
I think the exact
I'm sure.
the conversation was in Franklin. My parents were driving from Florida to Maine, and they stopped to take us out to eat. And my dad leans over and he says, what happens if your mom can't go on? Are you going to keep going? And he said, I'm going to put the Garmin on her, push SOS, and keep going. I don't think that's the exact, literal question my dad was asking. I think he meant if she was at a hotel and she didn't want to go on. But, that, and pretty much that's kind of how he was. He was like, I am not stopping. We're going all the way.
And given the breaks that you had, because you had to have, there was obviously a time crunch on getting to Katahdin on time. How did you manage this?
We never stopped. I think that was really the only thing. Looking back on it, we never took excessive breaks. If anything,
No.
the only breaks we ever took were ones that were planned that we needed to be on. And that really affected us because the whole
Yeah.
reason we were so behind is because I believe 2 months into the trail, we took a month off. And
Wow.
Yeah.
that was because of my schooling. But it really set us back. And that was really mainly why we were hurrying so much.
And we spent the rest of the trail basically trying to catch up because he needed to go back to school in the fall. And although we have some flexibility with his school schedule, it is now December and he is still behind on some classes. His teachers have been very flexible. He's working super hard and he's making progress. But the idea was that he would go back to school the third week in September, and he didn't go back until
October 12th.
Yeah, and then he had a surgery, so basically
Wow.
a month late. And so any day that we took a break to just watch the river was not possible. You know,
Sure.
if we were taking a break, it was because we desperately needed rest. And when we got back on the trail after May, we would sometimes go 2 weeks without a zero. And usually what would happen, and that wasn't often, but when he was between his Dungeons and Dragons sessions, when a new session was starting, he would take an extra week off and say, okay, we're going to take a break. We're going to take a week break before the new session starts. Then we would hike for those 2 weeks straight, and then he would take a time off. So I would not say, I don't recommend this. Give yourself plenty of time, but these are the circumstances of our life, and otherwise we wouldn't have been able to do it.
Yeah.
So it's better to do it with some compromises than not do it at all.
Yeah, I mean, you've got a story to tell. You've told it in the vlogs, you know, and you've got that rich experience of sharing that time together. I think you did it perfectly well. Now, once it was over, were you glad when you were done?
Very.
By the way, you can't. Nobody can see this, obviously,
Yeah,
but he just leaned forward. He said, "Very."
Did you notice how he got louder on the mic? It's good,
Yeah.
and his eyes opened up. You guys, like Steve said, you can't see it, but yeah, I think because of this, we had always hoped. We had skipped 100 miles in Vermont, and we're White Blaze purists. And hike your own hike, no judgment. That was just our thing. And we had gone back and made up 40 of those miles on like rainy days, and we didn't want to hike in Maine or New
Right.
Hampshire in the rain.
Sure.
And so we still had, what did we have left? 60 miles still?
63 miles.
63 miles. And we were going to go all the way to the basic Katahdin and go back and do Vermont and then come back up and hike. But because the weather got bad
Sure.
and it was predicted to close and it did end up closing, we just hiked all the way up to Katahdin. And then after that went and made up those miles. And so after we summited Katahdin and had to go back to Vermont and do 63 miles, I don't think we were as happy. Would you say? Like, it got colder. Captain was
Yeah.
like, "I'm done."
You were doing you were doing a job by then, weren't you? Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is kind of a shame to finish that. Which is why the epic finish at Katahdin is absolutely the way to finish this hike, isn't it? And Jessica, you seem to be, and we've spoken a couple of times now, incredibly up personality, and I know that the trail can really wear you down. I haven't seen a lot of your videos, but how did you? Did you get down very much while you're out there, or did you? I know you're obviously up for the video most of the time, but how did your personality change on the journey?
So the times I was not up, and I usually said it on the vlog, was never mental. It was physical. It was sadness because I was scared to death that physical was going to take me off the trail, and I wanted to keep going.
Yeah.
And when I got off for those 3 days to nurse my tendonitis and decide if I would let Captain continue on, I said to myself right then and there, and I'm not recommending for anyone, a doctor wouldn't recommend this, and I'm surely not a doctor. I was not going to come off that trail physically unless I had to be removed from the trail. And that meant not helicoptered out. I'm not going to push myself to that extreme or endanger other people.
Or expense.
But when I say that, I mean, I'm at that last half mile and Captain has to carry my pack and I'm limping and I realize, okay, I'm done, and Will picks me up. And so when I took on that attitude that I'm just going to hike through this pain, I didn't really get sad when I had pain, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I am an upbeat person. I was so grateful to have the time and the money. It was a financial stretch for us, but the ability to be able to do this with an able body, to do it with someone I love, that anytime I felt pain or sadness or we're never going to make this or this is stressful. I just looked at what I had and just said, look what you're doing.
Yes,
There are people that never get to do this.
It's worth stepping back and doing that from time to time, because we all have tough days on the trail, and that's what they always say, never quit on a bad day, because the next day is normally going to be fine, isn't it? So, you have to step back and realise what a wonderful experience your partner gave you.
Yes.
To facilitate you doing this, which is both of you as well.
To work as an amazing team. Also, Steve, I did cry. Like if I was feeling like I can't do this, I would just have a good cry. And I would sometimes Captain would see me cry. Sometimes I would call Will and just like, I got to have a good cry. Like this, I'm like, this is so hard. Going through the presidentials, we hiked in the dark at the end. Our pickup spot was closed because it was on that road that closes, and we got too late. And then I fell and I was limping. And I was like, and then I was better. I just had a nice good cry.
Always helps. Oh, every time. And Largo, I think we all undergo change in a long hike like this. Did you notice changes in your mother? And what about within yourself?
Oh, most definitely I noticed changes. I would definitely say her physical ability really didn't improve. It got worse. No, it really improved. And just kind of her ability to kind of, I don't know, go toughen it up maybe. Something around those lines. And I definitely noticed that, because it was a big hike, and you definitely can't just go there and be the same person when you leave. But I would say
one guy said to me on the trail early on, you can watch all the vlogs and read all the books and watch all the movies and look at all the Facebook messages, but you really don't know until you're here.
Absolutely.
And there is kind of something really good in that, because I think if people knew how freaking hard it was going to be, like really hard it was going to be, they might not go. But once they're in it, they're like, I can survive this. I'm just going to do this, you know?
Yeah. And did you notice things about yourself, Largo, where you feel that you had changed? You've mentioned about your mother changing. What about you?
I don't know if I really ever noticed anything.
But
I don't know. You might be able to say something.
I bet Jessica did.
Oh my gosh. So you guys can't see my face, but my eyes just got the size of saucers. Because of our lifestyle, Captain and his sister have always been very mature, very responsible. We've given them a lot of freedom to, kind of almost behave as adults. So I didn't expect a ton of growth on him, because he was a 16-year-old at the time, and just, I couldn't see areas where he needed growth, to be honest. But what I did see that was really profound was his leadership. And he wasn't not a leader before, but we always operated as a family of four, leading and working together. And on this trail, there was a lot of the time where, I was in pain, or he would hike ahead and set the tent up. And he really took a great leadership role. And also talking with other hikers, helping other hikers if they needed something. Often we would talk to someone, he'd say, oh, that person's really struggling. I said, I know. And then he'd talk to the person or walk with them for a bit. He was very, very good at navigation and just taking the lead for so many things that I normally would just take the lead for. And I really noticed it when Will came on the trail, his dad, because up until that point, and even after that part, we had our roles, like responsibilities, who did what chores, who did what with the vlogging. I did this with the vlogging, he did the time lapses, and we split it all. Well, when Will came on trail, although Will's always been the primary vlogger in the family, which was a whole other learning curve for Captain and I, Will had to hike, and Will's in good shape, but he wasn't in 18 to 20 mile a day shape, right? Right off from working 15-hour days.
No one is to start with.
And so Captain had to take on everything, the water, finding where we're going to sleep, the food, but also the vlogging. And really, Will was a supporting character, and Largo would say, okay, now we're going to vlog this. We always do the number at the beginning of the day. And so that's where I really, really saw his leadership, his empathy.
That must have been great for Will as well. Must have been great for Will as well, mustn't
definitely.
it? For him to see how his son had developed through, and not your tutelage, but your assistance, obviously bringing that person out there.
You don't really get an opportunity to see that with your kids very much because they're always with you, right? And then when you get a break, no one gets a 6-month kind of break or several month, I don't say break, but distance from their kid, and then to come back and see what the change is after they've done that. The leadership was the biggest thing. I noticed a lot of empathy. We saw a lot of people on the trail, not a lot, but there were people who were homeless. There were veterans who were homeless. He had a great understanding and empathy for that. He was willing to give our food to people that didn't have enough food. And he's always been like that, but it's always been in the shadow of we do this kind of stuff as a family, where he was initiating it on his own. And of course, he's fearless. Like, I don't know where he got that from, but
yeah, you need to get rid of that. Yeah, that's not a great thing to have all the time, by the way. Are you now? What's the next adventure? I mean, you say you plan for these things. You've got a 2 or 3 year plan now. So have you got one lined up?
That is a good question.
What are you talking about? What are we doing right now?
That's more my adventure than anything else. I'm currently getting my license, my private pilot's license in aviation. And
he's on his second week.
I am in fact on my second week, yes. And I don't think there's anything too crazy apart from that. We're going back to the boat after this. It normally takes around 6 to 8 months to get the license.
So is the ambition then, Largo, to qualify? You're going to become a commercial pilot?
Yes.
So have you landed yet?
Not yet. That's the biggest part of it, of the license. I don't know, your ability.
How old do you have to be then to be a commercial pilot?
There really is no age limit. Just there.
So if you get the license now, you could become a pilot. You could be flying me around at the age of 18.
Pretty much, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, but not on a commercial flight.
Oh, right.
He needs to get hours. But on a private flight, he could.
The whole limit with that is you need 1,500 hours to be a pilot or to be an airline pilot. And so, I mean, I could technically be an airline pilot at 18, but I would have nothing else. That would be it. I would have just been flying and sleeping that entire time.
Because he's still going to school.
Yeah.
And like you said, we'll go back to, we host group travel trips around the world. And in the summer, we're doing a volunteer event in Cambodia because Largo is building a library and we're assisting him with some other volunteers in Cambodia. And then we'll go back to our boat and continue sailing, probably to French Polynesia. And we hope to get to French Polynesia before he goes to university. We'll see what happens. Hang
on. You just said, you've just thrown in that Largo is building a library in Cambodia. I mean, for God's sake, come on.
It's a library in an English school there.
Yeah. That is so damn cool. That is you've given your kids, and I'm sure your daughter as well, although perhaps not the adventure that you've had this year, such a great experience and an opportunity to see the world that, I admire you for doing it. I could never have done it myself, so I admire you for doing it. And, I thanks for coming back on and sharing your story with us, because I'm sure it's going to inspire a lot of people to do the same sort of thing. So thanks for coming on.
Absolutely.
Thank you for having us.
Okay. Yeah. Take it easy, okay?
Bye.
Cheers. Bye. What a great journey for the two of them to share as mother and son. You can give your kids all sorts of experiences and things, but spending 6 months in the woods with them probably beats pretty much everything else. They made the hike work for them, a particularly important thing to consider when you have to juggle aspects of your life. Largo was even able to continue his Dungeons & Dragons business, while Jessica was also able to do her thing as well. And in the interview, which I know you couldn't see, they were so in tune with one another, each waiting for the other to speak when they'd had their own say. It was nice to see. I'm adding several links in the show notes, including how you can get your kids into Largo's D&D games. I tell you what, if I had a couple of youngsters right now, I would definitely be signing them up. Thanks, as ever, go to our splendid donors who keep us putting out these podcasts to you all. This week, monthly donors who stuck with us again are Paul Chevelle, Woody Bass, Natisha Webb and Nicola Huss. Thanks to you all, and remember, not only can you donate through our hikingradionetwork.com website, you can also Zelle a donation directly to me through steve@hikingradionetwork.com, for which I will be truly grateful. Finally today, Emily discovers just how cold it can get once you've sent your winter gear home. I'll see you next week. Chapter 17. The key to success is preparedness. A week of struggles and challenges began after we exited Troutvale. We had another long day planned. Long days and big miles were the norm lately. It was a nice day of hiking. The forest was starting to spring into life with new growth and more animal sightings. At Black Horse Gap, mile 97.7 of the Blue Ridge Parkway, we met up with Bruce again, accompanied by his parents. Wendell and Josephine, aka Dad and Mum, were on their annual migration north to their summer home in Maine. They provided some snacks and beverages to my hiking buddies, officially making them trail angels. Also in attendance on the trail were two large, shaggy dogs. They looked like giant, bushy black labs. We were in the middle of nowhere. They were obviously lost. Luckily for them, phone numbers were on their collars. I was secretly hoping Bruce would not be able to contact the owner. I wanted to keep them. After I spent time cuddling and sharing my snacks with those lovable canines, I looked down at my leg and there it was, a black dot just below my knee on the outside of my leg. I couldn't freak out because I was surrounded by my in-laws and hiking family. I couldn't let them know just how crazy I was. Ticks were my number one fear of hiking the Appalachian Trail, and this one had attached itself. I spent a couple of hours in Troutville treating my clothes with gear and permethrin to prevent a tick attack, but I was not wearing what I had treated. The weather was nice and I delayered, exposing bare skin. I did not apply repellent because the bugs were not out bothering me. My theory was that the tick came from the dogs. I did not have any tweezers. I had sent them home in the spirit of ultralightness. Thanks to Cookie Monster, who did have a pair, I was able to safely remove the disease-carrying parasite, and then I frantically called my doctor's office back home, knowing he would wire me a prescription for an antibiotic, just to be safe. But I was out of luck. Dr. Ritter was not in, and the receptionist told me to call the local authorities and they would advise me on the area's risk factor. That was not the answer I wanted. I knew in my heart it was not the answer Dr. Ritter would have given me either. I drew a circle around the bite site to watch for signs over the next few days. I was relieved no signs or symptoms appeared. I limped my way across the James River Bridge, ending my 20-mile day. I sat at the trailhead waiting for the guys. We would share a hitch into Glasgow for the night. I enjoyed the break, people watching for 30 minutes until Pumpkin Butt arrived. I managed to snag us a ride to town. The driver graciously waited for GQ and Walking Man to join us. Town was 6 miles away, and we were glad to have a hitch, even if our driver was packing a Glock on his waist. When he opened his trunk to throw in our packs, he had to arrange his AK-47. Neither of us was fazed by his arsenal. Must have been our New England upbringing. Our driver was all too aware of our need for transportation. He was a young hiking enthusiast who wouldn't let us pay him. He apologised for his weapons and explained that he was returning from the shooting range. Glasgow, like Troutville, had a spot for hikers to camp sponsored by the town and Boy Scouts. There was even an 8-bunk shelter with power outlets, a fire ring, an outdoor shower cleaner than some hostels, and a porta potty. It was a small town and all we needed was within a stone's throw of the camping area. Since we had done a 20-miler, I was still in pain from the day's hike. I was glad the restaurant was less than 100 yards from my tent. It was Mother's Day and I was solo. I was a little sad, but at the same time I was there alone by choice. I try hard not to get caught up in the commercialisation of such holidays. My family is always so good to me on a regular basis. I don't feel the need to receive such showering of praises. Stephen and Patch contacted me earlier in the day to send love and greetings. Bruce had stayed the night before with us at the shelter, and he filled my empty cash pouch with money to splurge on a meal, since I carried minimal cash to prevent losing it. Even though I don't expect anything from my loved ones, I never refuse any gifts and greatly appreciate them. Pumpkin, GQ and Walking Man were not ready for supper when I was, so I celebrated alone. I had the usual: fries, a burger, salad and a strawberry milkshake. The portions were huge. My leftovers provided GQ and Pumpkin with an appetizer. They were always very willing to consume what I could not eat. Even though I was in full hiker hunger mode, my bottomless pit did fill at times. I slept soundly and woke up refreshed, which was a good thing since we had 15 miles planned for the day. With a late start, we headed back to the trail for another eventful hike in the woods. The sun was shining and we were logging the miles. The sunshine lasted only so long, and we ended the hike in a thunderstorm. It was really close, so close that one burst of lightning caused the hair on my neck to stand, and I looked back to see if Walking Man was in fact still walking. Our goal was a campsite noted in the guidebook. We searched and searched for the campsite, backtracking a short distance. All we encountered were private property signs. After no success and diminishing daylight, we stealth camped. The rain stopped just as we were unpacking our tents. As soon as I was set up, I noticed fresh bear markings a few feet away. I let the guys know and we all decided we'd risk it. We were wet and tired and not going anywhere. We didn't even hang our food bags. Not sure that was a smart idea. It rained during the night. Everything was wet in the morning, but at least the rain had stopped by the time to get up. The guys wanted to do a big day. I was not so thrilled about it. I was lagging behind more than normal. About 10 miles into the day, I was going to stop at a shelter and send a text to the guys so they would not worry about me. But when I reached the junction for the shelter, a sign informed me it was a half-mile down a blue blaze trail. No way was I doing any extra steps just to sleep, so I pushed on and soon came to a beautiful open meadow with a few scattered shade trees. I decided to stop there instead. I tried to send a text to the guys, but there was no service. I figured they had pushed on and I'd probably not catch them again. With my tent pitched and my gear hanging in the wind to dry, I pursued the spring. It was 3/10 of a mile across the meadow. When I returned, there was GQ and Walking Man all set up. They had dipped into the shelter where I had told them I'd be stopping, and since I never showed up, they decided to hike on. I thought morning would not come soon enough. The beautiful meadow turned into a wind tunnel between the surrounding hills. The soft breeze I welcomed for drying my clothes turned into a gale with dropping temperatures. I was wishing the tweezers was the only item I'd sent home. Back in Troutville, I had given all my cold gear to Bruce, believing spring had sprung. While I enjoyed my lighter pack, I did not relish the cold. That night the meadow winds sucked the warmth right out of me. As soon as there was the lightest glow on the horizon, I packed up and headed out. All I wanted to do was hike. I was always warm when I was hiking. It was the stopping that was cold. That day I worried. How was I going to keep warm for 2 more nights? I didn't have my wool PJs, down jacket, or even a sleeping bag. I only had my sleeping bag liner. That day while hiking, I was so mad at myself for trying to be too much of a minimalist. As I trudged along, feeling sorry for myself, I found a fleece blanket lying on a rock next to the trail. I thought I was hallucinating. I sat next to it to claim it without really claiming it. I waited a while to see if its owner would return. Lucky for me, no one showed up. I rolled it tightly, then stuffed it into my pack. It helped a little that night, but I was still extremely cold. It made me think of when we try to go it alone or follow our faith with minimum effort or none at all. Things don't always go as they should. When we reach our lowest point, we realise going without is dangerous. In my case, I was trying to have the lightest pack possible to make the hike easier. We do the same thing spiritually. We don't want to follow rules and guidelines that are clearly laid out for our well-being. We think they weigh us down or stop us from having a fun life. But when we leave God out of our packs, life actually becomes too heavy for us to bear on our own. And while we're crying and moaning over our situation, God will drop us a safety line or blanket to remind us He is there. The third night out was the worst. We were camped high up on a tree-covered ridge. I thought the trees would provide some shelter. Wrong. It was so cold that GQ warmed a few rocks by the fire and put them in his cookpot and slept with them. I was too proud to tell anyone what I'd done. I went to bed wearing every layer of clothing I had, which wasn't much. My pretty pink blanket provided very little protection from the mountain air. Partway through the night, I couldn't take it anymore. I was freezing, and this time I recognised the early signs of hypothermia. I emptied my backpack and stuffed my feet and legs into it. Because I'm vertically challenged, the pack actually covered my lower half. I would guess I'm the only hiker who has actually used their pack to sleep in. I don't recommend this as a way of achieving ultralight backpacking, but I can say I wasn't as cold. I wasn't warm, just not as cold. My challenges did not end there. Along with ditching my cold gear, I had also shed all items I thought I would not need any time soon. 2 days into my 5-day stretch in the woods, Mother Nature busted through the door. Not having tools for tick removal or the right gear for the cold was bad enough, but then I started my period. How could that be? I just finished it a week ago. This made the 3rd time in 2 months on the trail, but this time I was not prepared. I had no idea what to do. I had in my possession just enough tissue for normal use. I asked every female hiker I saw if she could help out. Usually females on the trail were scarce, but not those few days. There were more girls on the trail than guys, but not one of them had any feminine hygiene products. I resorted to collecting as much toilet tissue as I could from everyone I saw. Tampons were the first item on my pre-hike list, but I had failed to remember that. On the 4th evening, we were sitting around a campfire. It was myself, GQ, Walking Man, and 2 new hiking friends, Still Bill and Why Not. The guys were enjoying beer, and I my Pepsi. I was the only lady, and I was short on very much needed supplies. There was nothing like spoiling the mood, but I had to ask. I knew I couldn't make it to town the next day without more tissue, so I said, "Guys, I need help. Who has extra tissue or tea paper to help a girl in need?" Still Bill gave me a little, and I had to inform them I needed more. The look on their faces was priceless when I had to explain why it wasn't enough. Still Bill surrendered his entire roll, and Walking Man shared some wipes with him. Guys don't realise just how easy they have it hiking in the wilderness. There was still more. The last night before we reached the town, I ran out of fuel. As I was boiling water, the flame went out. At my last resupply from the car, I'd accidentally grabbed a partial can instead of a full canister of fuel. GQ was my hero that time and shared his hot water with me. It was a week of struggles and challenges that ended in laughter. I survived. The guys frequently reminded me of that week. If only I'd put into practice the key to success. Preparation prevents poor performance. I made it through all the issues, and when Bruce rejoined me, I collected all my gear. That night, I was so hot, I sweated.